Hugo, pause the route for a minute and keep the trays where they are. I'm already behind today. What's the issue?
Once is a mistake. Twice is suspicious. Hugo Brantley did this across 3 full tax seasons to hundreds of families who were counting on that money. And he left a paper trail for every single one.
Several refund checks from this route never reached the addresses.
Refund mail gets delayed every season. That doesn't mean it was taken.
He would not get to finish that sentence. Within 48 hours, federal agents would catalog opened refund envelopes, commercial-grade chemical solvents, a benchtop ventilation hood, and a handwritten spiral notebook ledger staged in the locking utility room of his basement in Fenelton, Delaware. 3 tax seasons, 243 stolen checks, approximately $760,000 in federal and state tax refund money lifted out of the maelstream of a single residential route. And the entire operation began to unravel because of a 46-year-old certified nursing assistant whose missing $4,200 refund check was not, for her, a delayed but eventually arriving inconvenience. It was 3 months of back rent and a pair of basketball shoes she could not afford to replace. Before we go any further, I have to ask you something. Have you ever had a check go missing in the mail and just assumed it was a delay at the post office? Drop a comment and tell me whether it ever actually turned up. And if you're new here, subscribe. We cover federal accountability cases like this every single week, and the details of this one get worse. Hugo Brantley was born in May of 1981 in Wilmington, Delaware. His father, Russell Brantley, worked 31 years on the loading dock of a regional grocery distributor on the south side of the city. His mother, Doreen, was a payroll clerk at a small accounting firm off Concord Pike. The Brantley household ran on hourly wages, 2 used cars that needed constant repair, and the particular Delaware working-class arithmetic of stretching a paycheck across 2 weeks. Hugo was the middle of 3 children. He grew up on a street in Claymont, where every front porch had a wooden mailbox screwed to the siding next to the storm door, and he could name the daytime postal carrier by sight before he could read. His mother filed their taxes by hand every February on the kitchen table, with a pencil and a handheld calculator, and the family's annual refund check, when it arrived in late March, was the only month of the year his father did not raise his voice about money. He graduated from Brandywine High School in 1999 in the bottom third of his class. His school counselor's exit assessment described him as quiet, dependable, not academically motivated, and suited for steady work. He spent 2 years after high school stocking shelves at the regional grocery chain where his father worked the loading dock, and another 2 years as a contractor's helper, hauling shingles and tear-off debris in a flatbed truck across the New Castle County suburbs. In 2007, he passed the USPS entrance examination on his second attempt. His training was conducted out of the Wilmington Processing and Distribution Center on Quigley Boulevard. He completed his en-route shadowing in 8 days and was assigned in 2008 to a relief carrier rotation across 3 suburban offices in northern Delaware. He earned approximately $15.28 per hour starting out. His personnel evaluations across the next several years used a consistent vocabulary, reliable in route memorization, physically capable of full daily loads, courteous with patrons, punctual without exception. One supervisor noted, in a 2011 review, that he had a strong working memory for envelope features, which was the kind of professional compliment that would later read very differently than it did the year it was written. In 2014, he was permanently assigned to Route 22C in Fenelton, a residential route covering approximately 580 households across a mid-density suburban service area. The route included 3 trailer parks, 2 garden-style apartment complexes that accepted Section 8 housing vouchers, and a long stretch of older single-family homes built in the early 1960s with original mail slots cut into their front doors. He met his future wife, Melinda Saxby, at a Friday night pickup hockey league in Newark in 2010. They married in 2012 at a small civil ceremony at the New Castle County Courthouse. They had 2 children. Their son, Connor, was born in 2014. Their daughter, Aubrey, was born in 2017, They bought a 3-bedroom split level on Maplewood Court in Fenelton in 2015 for $187,000 on a 30-year mortgage. By 2021, they were 2.5 months behind on the property tax and carrying a credit card balance that had not changed in 18 months. Hugo's father died of a stroke in February of 2019. His mother moved into a 1-bedroom apartment near the Newark train station, and Hugo took on her monthly utility bills. That is the man who, in mid-February of 2022, began stealing from his route. The United States Postal Service moves approximately 318 million pieces of mail per day. Every piece is scanned at intake, run through automated optical sorters at regional processing and distribution centers, separated into route-specific bundles, and handed off to the individual letter carrier responsible for the last mile. On any given morning at the Fenelton Post Office on Pine Street, Hugo Brantley arrived at 4:30 in the morning, clocked in at the time stand, poured himself a coffee from the break room pot, and walked to the row of gray metal sorting cases lined against the back wall. His case had 580 pigeonhole slots arranged in the precise sequence of his delivery route. He would pull bundles of pre-sorted mail from rolling carts, fan the envelopes in his hand, and slide each one into the correct slot. A practiced carrier can sort an envelope every 1 to 2 seconds. Hugo, by his 9th year on the route, was very practiced. The system that surrounded him rested on a specific and largely silent assumption. Once a piece of mail was placed in a carrier's possession, the next eyes on that envelope would belong to the addressee. There were no cameras over the sorting cases. There was no item-level scanning at the route level. Carriers were not searched at the end of their shifts. The federal mail stream, from the moment a carrier touched it to the moment a recipient opened their mailbox, ran almost entirely on the personal integrity of approximately 330,000 letter carriers across the country. For tax refund checks, the system was even more exposed. The United States Treasury issues paper refund checks in plain windowed envelopes with a recognizable return address block printed in a specific blue ink. The Delaware Department of Revenue issues state refunds in their own distinct envelope style. Both are unmistakable to a knowledgeable carrier. Both arrive in concentrated seasonal waves, February through May for federal refunds, overlapping state windows that depend on Delaware processing timing. Approximately 8% of American households still receive their federal refund as a paper check rather than via direct deposit. That 8% is not randomly distributed. It skews heavily toward households without bank accounts, households whose tax preparers do not offer direct deposit refund products, households whose annual refund is the largest single check they will see all year, and households whose annual refund is already allocated before it arrives to back rent, utility arrears, car repair, or the medical bills that have been sitting on a kitchen counter for 6 months. On Route 22C in Fenelton, that 8% was densely concentrated in the 3 trailer parks and the 2 Section 8 apartment complexes that anchored the southern half of the route. Hugo Brantley knew this. He had walked the southern half of Route 22C every weekday for more than 8 years. He knew which mailboxes belonged to people who could afford to wait for a delayed refund, and he knew which mailboxes belonged to people who could not. The first envelope he kept, by his later admission to federal investigators, came across his sorting case on the morning of February 18, 2022. It was a United States Treasury check addressed to a woman who lived in the larger of the 2 trailer parks on his route. He recognized the return address block from across the case. He fanned the envelope into the correct slot. Then, at the end of his sorting pass, he pulled it back out and slid it into the interior chest pocket of his postal jacket. He drove the route that day exactly as he had every other day. He greeted the same regulars on the same porches. He waved at the same dogs through the same chain-link fences. The envelope rode against his ribs for 9.5 hours until he walked back into his split level on Maplewood Court at 6:15 that evening, set his jacket on a kitchen chair, and waited for his wife to put their daughter to bed. He did not deposit the check himself. That was not the method. The method which he had spent the previous several months researching through a network of online forums and one in-person contact was check washing. Check washing is a chemical process. a solvent, typically acetone for the simplest application or commercial-grade mixtures for cleaner results, is applied to the surface of a paper check. The ink used to print the payee name and the dollar amount is dissolved and lifted from the paper, while the underlying security features and the printed elements of the check stock remain intact. The washed instrument can then be reinscribed with a new payee name and a new amount and presented for deposit or cashing through a controlled identity. Hugo's contact was a man named Reuben Voss, who operated out of a row house on West 7th Street in Chester, Pennsylvania, 23 miles north of Fenelton. Voss had been running a small check conversion operation for nearly a decade. He took stolen instruments on consignment, washed them in a basement workspace, reissued them through a stable of fictitious identities supported by counterfeit Delaware driver's licenses, and returned cash to his suppliers minus a percentage. His standard cut was 35%. Hugo's first delivery to Voss netted him approximately $2,700 in cash on a stolen check with a face value of $4,100. The cash came back to him in a manila envelope at a Wawa gas station on Route 13 9 days later. He used part of it to pay the past due property tax on his split level. He used another part to buy his daughter the larger of the 2 play kitchens she had been asking for since Christmas. He used the rest to pay down the balance on a credit card that had been carrying interest for 2 years. The second envelope came 8 days after the first. The third came the day after that. By the end of the 2022 federal refund season, which ran roughly from mid-February through the first week of May, Hugo had stolen approximately 71 envelopes. The combined face value was just over $211,000. His net, after Voss's cut and operational expenses, was approximately $126,000 in cash. He did not buy anything that would attract attention. He did not buy a boat. He did not buy a new truck. He did not take his family on a vacation that would have been outside their established pattern. He paid down debt. He accumulated cash in a fireproof safe in his basement. He made a single quiet renovation to his split level. A finished basement completed by a cash contractor over 3 weekends in the late summer of 2022. The basement, with its new drywall and its locking utility room, would become the staging area for the rest of the operation. In 2023, he expanded the method. He began pulling envelopes during the Delaware state refund window as well, which extended his active stealing season by several weeks. He started keeping a small spiral notebook in the locking utility room. A list, in his own handwriting, of every envelope he had taken, with check face values and Voss's payouts logged in 2 parallel columns. The notebook was a working ledger, not a confession. It was a tool for keeping Voss honest. The 2023 season produced approximately $289,000 in cash, net. By the 2024 season, he had also begun to learn the chemistry himself. He purchased acetone, glycerin, and a small benchtop ventilation hood through a chemistry supply website using a prepaid Visa card. He installed the equipment in the locking utility room of his basement. By March of 2024, he was washing the lower value checks himself, saving Voss's percentage on the ones he could handle alone, and only sending the larger or more difficult instruments north to Chester. The 2024 season was the most lucrative of the 3. It was also, although he did not yet know it, the last. Latasha Reeves was 46 years old. She lived in a 1-bedroom unit in the Maplewood Garden Apartments on the southern half of Hugo Brantley's route, where she had been a Section 8 voucher tenant for 9 years. She worked as a certified nursing assistant at an extended care facility in Newark, picking up overtime shifts whenever they were posted on the bulletin board outside the timekeeper's office. She filed her federal taxes by hand at a community tax prep nonprofit on East Main Street every February. In late February of 2024, she filed a federal return claiming a refund of $4,200. The number included the earned income tax credit and the additional child tax credit for her son, Demetrius, who was 11. The IRS confirmed receipt and processing within 2 weeks. The refund was issued as a paper check on March 8, 2024, addressed to her unit on Maplewood Drive. She had already allocated the money. $2,300 would go to her landlord, covering 3 months of partial rent arrears she had been carrying since November. $600 would go toward the brake job her 10-year-old Hyundai had needed since the same November. $300 would replace the bedroom space heater that had failed in January. The rest would clear 2 utility delinquencies and buy her son a pair of basketball shoes that actually fit his growing feet. The check did not arrive in the second week of March, when she expected it. It did not arrive in the third week. By the fourth week, she had called the IRS twice and been told both times that the check had been issued and mailed, and that she would need to wait the standard period before she could request a replacement. By the 6th week, when the check still had not arrived, the IRS finally agreed to stop payment and issue a replacement check. The replacement check, issued in early May, was also stolen. She did not learn that until June. In June of 2024, after losing 2 consecutive refund checks issued to the same address, Latasha Reeves filed a formal complaint with the United States Postal Service Office of Inspector General. Her complaint was specific in a way most consumer complaints are not. It included her IRS confirmation numbers. It included the dates of issuance for both checks. It included the dates and times of her follow-up calls. It included the names of the IRS agents she had spoken to. And it included her own observation, recorded in her own words, that her mail carrier had recently begun lingering at her mailbox in a way she had not previously noticed. Her complaint was logged on June 11, 2024. It joined a cluster of 17 other reports the OIG had been tracking on routes in the Fenelton area over the previous 14 months. Reports that, taken individually, had not been sufficient to open a formal investigation, but that, taken collectively, established a pattern. On July 8th, OIG Special Agent David Crenshaw opened a formal case file on Route 22C. Special Agent David Crenshaw of the United States Postal Service Office of Inspector General had been a federal postal investigator for 19 years. He had previously worked routes in Baltimore, in North Philadelphia, and across the eastern shore of Maryland. He had, in his career, opened formal investigations on 43 letter carriers. 41 of those investigations had resulted in federal indictments. His method on Route 22C was conservative and methodical. Between July and September of 2024, his team conducted a passive document review. They pulled Brantley's complete personnel file. They reviewed the 18 consumer complaints associated with the route over the previous 24 months. They cross-referenced the dates of each complaint against the daily route assignment logs to confirm Brantley had been the carrier on duty for each affected delivery. They identified 24 households that had reported missing Treasury or Delaware Department of Revenue mail over an 18-month window, a concentration far exceeding the statistical baseline for a route of that size. Beginning in October of 2024, Crenshaw's team initiated controlled mail testing. The protocol is specific and federally codified. A test piece is prepared at an OIG forensic facility. An envelope is constructed bearing the precise visual characteristics of a Treasury refund check. Inside is a marked instrument with unique fluorescent identifiers visible only under specific wavelengths. The piece is inserted into the mail stream at a controlled point and tracked through the route to either delivery confirmation or non-delivery. Between October 4th and November 22nd, 2024, the OIG inserted 12 test pieces into Route 22C. 7 were delivered to their intended recipients without incident. 5 did not arrive. Of those 5, 3 were subsequently identified at known check conversion points across the Mid-Atlantic region, within 72 hours of their projected delivery dates. 2 of them surfaced through a banking fraud filing at a small credit union in southern Chester County, Pennsylvania, the same jurisdiction that housed Reuben Voss's row house on West 7th Street. On December 9, 2024, Crenshaw and his team obtained a federal search warrant for Hugo Brantley's residence on Maplewood Court and a separate warrant for Voss's row house. The warrants were executed simultaneously at 6:30 in the morning on December 11th. What investigators recovered from Brantley's basement reframed the case entirely. In the locking utility room, they found a benchtop ventilation hood, 3 labeled containers of commercial-grade check washing solvent, glycerin, a heat press for paper conditioning, a set of pre-printed blank check templates calibrated to Treasury security features, and approximately 140 opened refund check envelopes addressed to 38 separate households on Route 22C. In a metal lockbox bolted to a basement shelf, they found Hugo's spiral notebook ledger. It documented, in his own handwriting, every envelope he had taken across 3 tax seasons. It listed face values. It listed dates. It listed the addresses he had pulled them from. It listed Voss's payouts. It listed 243 checks. When investigators tallied the column of face values, the total came to $760,000 and change. In a smaller box on the same shelf, they found approximately $73,000 in cash and a printout of his property tax payment history. The history had been current since 2022 for the first time in his ownership of the house. Reuben Voss was arrested at his Chester row house the same morning. He agreed to cooperate by the end of the day. Before we get into the morning they came for him, I want to say this. If you've stayed with this story through 9 years of route detail and 3 tax seasons of stolen checks, that's because the story deserves to be told properly. Subscribe if you agree. We cover federal accountability cases like this every single week, and we do not look away. The sentencing in this one is worth waiting for. The morning of December 11th, 2024, was the coldest morning Fenelton had recorded that season. The outdoor temperature at 6:30 was 21 degrees. A thin layer of frost coated the bed of Hugo Brantley's pickup truck in the driveway of the split level on Maplewood Court. He had not yet left for work. He was standing in his kitchen, in his USPS winter uniform, pouring coffee into the steel travel mug he had carried every morning for 9 years. 8 federal agents approached the front door. The lead agent, Special Agent David Crenshaw, knocked 3 times. The knock was loud enough to carry into the kitchen. Hugo set down the coffee. He walked to the front door. He looked through the peephole. He saw on his front porch the dark blue windbreakers stenciled with the white letters of the United States Postal Inspection Service. He paused for approximately 4 seconds. Then he opened the door. "Hugo Brantley? Yes. We have a federal search warrant for your residence. Step out onto the porch and place your hands on the railing, please. What is this about? We can discuss that. First, step out onto the porch." Hugo did as he was instructed. His wife, Melinda, appeared at the top of the stairs in a bathrobe, her hair still flat from sleep. His son, Connor, then 10 years old, appeared behind her in pajamas. Both stopped at the top of the stairs and did not come down. "Can my family stay inside?" "They can stay inside. We need them to come down to the living room and remain there while we conduct the search." "Am I being arrested?" "Yes." Hugo's hands were on the porch railing. The agents began moving past him into the house. He did not turn his head to watch them go. He looked at a single point on the railing, approximately 4 inches in front of his left thumb, and he did not speak again for the next 11 minutes. When Crenshaw eventually asked him whether he wanted to make a statement at the residence, Hugo answered with 5 words. "I want a lawyer present." He did not speak to federal investigators again outside the presence of counsel. A federal grand jury in the District of Delaware returned a 4-count indictment against Hugo Brantley on January 9th, 2025. The charges were theft of mail by a postal employee in violation of Title 18 United States Code, Section 1709, bank fraud in violation of Title 18 United States Code, Section 1344, aggravated identity theft in violation of Title 18 United States Code, Section 1028A, and conspiracy in violation of Title 18 United States Code, Section 371. The combined maximum exposure across the 4 counts exceeded 30 years. His defense attorney, Brendan O'Keefe, was a Wilmington-based federal practitioner who had handled postal cases before. O'Keefe filed an initial motion to suppress the contents of the basement search, arguing that the warrant scope had not adequately specified the locking utility room. The motion was denied at a hearing on February 14, 2025, when the United States Magistrate Judge ruled that the warrant's reference to outbuildings, basements, garages, and any locked subdivision thereof was sufficiently specific. By early March, with the suppression motion lost and Reuben Voss already cooperating against him, O'Keefe advised his client to accept a plea agreement. Hugo Brantley pleaded guilty to all 4 counts on March 26, 2025, before the Honorable Patrice Bellwether of the United States District Court for the District of Delaware. The plea agreement included full restitution and the government's agreement not to pursue enhancement on a 5th potential count involving misuse of postal employee credentials. Sentencing was scheduled for July 2, 2025. The sentencing hearing ran 4 hours. The government called 11 victim witnesses. 8 of them gave statements in open court. Latasha Reeves was the 7th witness called. She wore the Navy scrubs she had come to court in directly from her overnight shift at the extended care facility. She read from a single typed page, holding it in both hands. For 3 months, she told the court, she had begged the IRS to believe her. She had begged her landlord to wait. She had asked her 11-year-old son to be patient about basketball shoes that did not fit. She had done everything a working person is supposed to do, and the man who was supposed to bring her her mail had been stealing from her and from her neighbors and counting the money in his basement. She wanted him to know that the $4,200 he took from her was not a number. It was 3 months of choices she had to make that she should not have had to make. Judge Bellwether addressed Hugo Brantley directly before pronouncing sentence. She spoke for approximately 7 minutes. 3 sentences of her statement entered the official sentencing record and the local Delaware press. "Mr. Brantley," she said, "you held a position of federal trust for 9 years. Every household on your route handed you their financial lives every morning, and you understood exactly which of those households could least afford to lose what you were taking. You did not exploit a weakness in the system. You exploited the people the system was built to serve." She sentenced him to 60 months in federal prison, 5 years, followed by 3 years of supervised release. She ordered full restitution in the amount of $760,000, administered through a federal trust to the affected refund recipients on Route 22C. She imposed a permanent bar from any future federal employment. Hugo Brantley is currently serving his sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution at Schuylkill, a low-security facility in eastern Pennsylvania. His projected release date is in 2030. His wife, Melinda, filed for divorce in October of 2025. The house on Maplewood Court was sold at a discount in November to satisfy the first tranche of the restitution order, and the finished basement, with its drywall and its locking utility room, was advertised in the listing photographs as additional living space. Latasha Reeves, whose missing $4,200 refund opened the case, received her replacement check, with interest, in January of 2026. This case was quiet, but the case on your screen right now is on a completely different level. Click it now.